The second part of chapter 2 is about organic chemistry. It's a lot of work, so focus. We start with organic molecules. So what are these? Organic molecules contain carbon, hydrogen. So when you talk about organic chemistry, you will see carbon in there, and you will see hydrogen in there. Sometimes you will see oxygen, you will see nitrogen, you will see sulfur, among other atoms. But mostly you have carbon and hydrogen in organic compounds. So they have what we call functional groups. So functional groups are it's just part of the molecule that gives the molecule its characteristics. So we will say that this molecule is an alcohol because it has a functional group of alcohol. We say this molecule is an acid because it has a functional group of an acid, and you will see what that means. So write down this. You need to write down what a functional group is. So a functional group is a part of the molecule that gives the molecule its characteristics, and we'll see that as we move on. So I'll take it off here and then proceed. So organic compounds are very important. They are the backbone of living organisms. So many organic molecules important to living organisms are large macromolecules. So let me change the pen, ink color. I will take this one. So macromolecules are really large molecules. So macromolecules are large molecules. That's what macro means. They are just large molecules. So you need to write down that definition. So a lot of organic compounds are composed of these large molecules we call macromolecules. So a macromolecule is a polymer. Another definition that you need to write down. So a macromolecule is a polymer. A polymer is a molecule that is made up of repeating units. So a molecule made up of repeating units, or it's a molecule made up of repeating simple molecules. So it's a large, so we say it's a large molecule, so add large here. A polymer is a large molecule made up of repeating simple molecules. So keep this definition when we go back to it later in this topic. So I'm taking it off here. I just need an eraser to get pointer eraser to get this information off. Hopefully you have written it. Stop the video, write it down, and then proceed. So polymers are made up of monomers. So a polymer will have several monomers. So you have a monomer here, monomer, connected to monomer, connected to another monomer. So you keep on connecting the monomers, then you make a polymer. So a monomer is a simple molecule that makes up polymers. So it's a simple molecule that makes up a polymer. So to have a polymer, you need to have many monomers. So to have a polymer, you need to have a polymer you need many monomers to connect. So monomers must connect to make a polymer. So that's the definition of a monomer. So these monomers, sometimes they can exist as their own, they can exist on their own without connecting to other monomers. Sometimes they are connected to make a polymer. So a monomer can exist on its own or will exist within a chain that is a polymer. So some important polymers that we are going to look at are the carbohydrates. So that's the first polymer we are going to look at. A carbohydrate is a polymer made from monomers that we call the saccharides. Then we have proteins. Proteins is a protein is a polymer that is made up of monomers we call amino acids. And we have lipids, but lipids are not polymers as such, but still they are important organic compounds that we are going to talk about. So lipids, not really, but these two, carbohydrates and proteins, have monomers. They are polymers because they have monomers. Now, let me just introduce you to the molecular formulas and structures of organic compounds. The simplest organic compound is an alkane. So I'll say this is simplest organic compound. So it's an alkane. And an alkane contains only carbon and hydrogen. As you can see, the first alkane, actually here we don't have the first alkane. The first alkane is written like this, HCH4, and we call it methane. So the natural gas that we use to heat our house is methane. Then we have another alkane which has 2 carbons, so it's written C2H6, 2 carbons and 6 hydrogens. So this is the formula. This is the structure. But this structure is called condensed structure. The structure gives the arrangement of atoms. So molecular structure, provides the arrangement of atoms in a molecule. That is the connectivity. How they are connected. While molecular formula provides the number of each atom in the molecule. So you can see here the formula is just telling us that we have 2 carbons and we have 6 hydrogens. Here the structure is telling us that 1 carbon is connected to 3 hydrogens and the other carbon is connected to 3 hydrogens. So this is a condensed structure, while this one is an expanded structure formula. So you can be shown organic compounds and asked which one is this? Is it a molecular formula? Is it a structure? Is it a condensed structure, or is it expanded structure? Also take note of the 3D structures. So alkanes only have carbon and hydrogen. If someone asks you what are alkanes, you say alkanes are compounds, or you say alkanes are organic compounds that have only carbon and hydrogen. So alkanes are organic compounds that have only carbon and hydrogen. So take note of that. Then we go to another group. So alkanes, here alkanes have no double bond. Because of that, they are called, you need to write down that, they are called saturated. Alkanes have no double bonds, they are called saturated. So like these are not alkanes, so we'll take them off here. These are not alkanes, especially you see the double bond here. This is an alkane, this is an alkane, this is also an alkane. no double bond. Then we have alkanes. Alkanes have double bond. So alkanes are organic compounds that contain carbon and hydrogen only, but they have a double bond. So alkenes have a double bond. As you can see here, we have a double bond here, a double bond here, a double bond. But they must contain only carbon and hydrogen. But they should have a double bond. While alkanes also contain only carbon and hydrogen, but they do not have a double bond. So these are the second organic compounds. We go to the third organic compounds. This is where we introduce a functional group. So I will redefine a functional group again. So a functional group is part of a molecule that gives the molecule its characteristics. So that is a functional group. Now, when we talk about functional groups, one type of a molecule that has functional groups is called alcohols, or like MOA, alcohol. So please make sure to write this definition again. So alcohol is an organic compound that has a functional group. The functional group of an alcohol is OH. So I'll say here, alcohol is an organic compound that has a functional group OH. So this functional group is known as a hydroxyl group. So like you see this one, if I write it somewhere, it will be like CH3OH. So this part is a functional group. If I write this one, it will be C2H5OH. So this OH is the functional group of alcohols. We will see it later when we talk about the carbohydrates and the other things. Not specifically carbohydrates, but when we talk about when you talk about carbohydrates, actually. Then we have another organic compound we call carboxylic acid. So carboxylic acids are organic compounds that have a functional group that is COOH. So when you talk about COOH, COOH looks like C, double bond here, O, then OH, like what we see here. A double bond here, then OH. So this is an acid. A carboxylic acid is an acid because it can lose this hydrogen here. This hydrogen can be removed from the oxygen, and because it can lose the hydrogen, it is called an acid. So these are acids because they can lose the hydrogen from the OH. So they can lose this hydrogen from the OH. So when you see something that has COOH, know that that is a carboxylic acid. COOH. This is the functional group of the acid. This is a functional group of the acid. And this is a functional group of a carboxylic acid. We'll go back and look at them when we talk about lipids. Now let's go to these macromolecules. We have three types of macromolecules that we are going to talk about. These are polymers. But we will also talk about one other thing, that is lipids or fatty acids, which is not here. So the first one is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is a polymer. This polymer has a monomer. The monomers of carbohydrates are known as monosaccharides. So here you need to be able to identify, if I say this is a protein, what is its monomer? The monomer of a protein is amino acid. This is nucleic acid. What is the monomer for that? The monomer of nucleic acid is nucleotide. So I'll say monomer of carbohydrates is monosaccharide, and you will see what this monosaccharide is. Monomer of protein is amino acid. Also write down monomer of nucleic acid is nucleotide, and you will see what a nucleotide is. Now let's start. Let's talk about some things that happens for monomers to become polymers. Most of the times, the monomers will undergo dehydration synthesis. So if your teacher asks you, what is dehydration synthesis? So it is a reaction where combining molecules lose water. So really, dehydration is loss of water by definition. Dehydration is loss of water. So the polymers will link by losing water. So in the place of the water, there will be a chain, a linkage. So like 2 hydrogens and an oxygen are removed in the reaction. So 2 hydrogens and oxygen means water. So you remove 2 hydrogen, you remove 1 oxygen. When you combine them, they form H2 and O. So removal of hydrogen and oxygens is dehydration. So in a reaction like that, water is a byproduct. So dehydration is used to make monomers. So let me just write here. Dehydration is used to make polymers. So if you have monomers, you want to make polymers, you use dehydration. So let's take note of that. Dehydration is used to make polymers. But now, when you have a polymer and you want to make monomers, you use an opposite reaction. And this reaction is known as hydrolysis. So while dehydration is the loss of water, hydrolysis is addition of water to break something. So in here you add water to break a polymer into monomers. That's what you do. So in this case, a polymer is broken down to monomers. Make sure to write that down. So you add water to break down polymer. That is hydrolysis. You need to be able to define what is hydrolysis and what is dehydration. So in this case, in the first case here, water is a byproduct. In the first case here, water is a byproduct. In this case, you need water for that reaction to happen. So you need to add water to it. Now it's not a byproduct at all. It's a raw material. So water is a raw material in hydrolysis. Is a raw material in hydrolysis. Because you need it. So this is what is happening. If you have 2 monomers, these 2 monomers have, one monomer has OH here, the other monomer has H. So what will happen is these will be removed. So you remove this, you cut this OH from there, and you cut this H from there. They combine to form water, and you leave room here where they can connect to form a monomer. So this process is dehydration. I want you to be able to memorize this process. If you are given a diagram like this one, you need to know that, oh, if we have OH on one side and H on one side, when we get rid of that and connect the remaining parts, we are forming a polymer using dehydration. So this is a polymer, and this is a monomer, not polymer. So we have a monomer here, So we have a monomer here. And the monomer is forming a polymer through loss of water, which we call dehydration. Now, if we go the other way, if we go now up from monomer to polymer, then we need to add water. If you add water to this, so we are adding water here, we call it hydrolysis. Then going up is you add water, right? So you are moving from a polymer to a monomer. Now you need to add water so that you bring back the water here while breaking the chemical bond. So you are breaking the chemical bond here, you add OH this side and H this side, and you have two monomers. So this one is a polymer, this one is a monomer. So these two reactions are opposite to each other. Hydrolysis makes monomers. Dehydration makes polymers. So let's start with carbohydrates. I mean, carbohydrates is something that we usually talk about. I don't want to eat too much carbs. I don't want all sorts of things. So a carbohydrate has a ratio of hydrogen atoms to oxygen atoms of 2 to 1. So if you have a carbohydrate, definitely it will have a lot of carbon atoms, but then it will also have hydrogen atoms, and then it has oxygen atoms. So a carbohydrate has C atom, has H atom, has O atom. But for every 2 of this, there is 1 of this. That's what it means, a 2 to 1 ratio. So in a carbohydrate, for every 2 hydrogens, we have 1 oxygen. In carbohydrates, you need to write down this. In carbohydrates, for every 2 hydrogens, we have 1 oxygen. So that's what we mean when we say the ratio is 2 to 1. So make sure to write down this statement, and I'm taking it off. So a carbohydrate has atomic group HCOH. So that's how it will look like. So what it means, we have one hydrogen here, another hydrogen here. For these 2 hydrogen, we have 1 oxygen, and we have a lot of carbons in there. So why do we call it carbohydrate? Carbohydrate means hydrates of carbon. So carbohydrates means hydrates of carbon. That's where the name came from. So take note of that. What does carbohydrate means? They are the hydrates of carbon. If you add water to carbon, you make a carbohydrate. That's what it means. So, in simple terms, if you add water to carbon, you make carbohydrates. That's why they are called hydrates of carbon. What do we use carbohydrates for? Carbohydrates are there to provide energy. So when the carbs go into the body, they undergo respiration, and respiration produces energy. So they are principal energy source for cells. So take note of that function. So what is the work of carbohydrates? They are for energy. They provide energy through respiration. So breaking down of food to form energy. And they are principal energy source for cells, and also they are for short-term energy storage. If you have too much energy and you want to store it somewhere until you use it, or you run and you use it, you can use carbohydrates for that. Also, they are structural components. So we'll see what this means. This one, the principal energy source, is usually the starch. The storage one is called glycogen, and we'll see what glycogen is. Another carbohydrates that we use for structural component, the structure of trees, structure of things, is known as cellulose, and we'll see what cellulose does. So each type of hydrocarbon has its function. Starch will be there to store energy. Glycogen, starch will be there as a principal energy source. So you're going to break down starch to glucose. So starch through glucose. Then we have glycogen. Glycogen stores energy for a while until you need that energy. Then glycogen will send the energy back to be used. Then we have cellulose. Cellulose keeps the structure of things. That is cellulose. Also, we use it for cell-to-cell recognition, but it's really not a big job. But we use we use carbohydrates for that. So write down all these 4 functions of carbohydrates. The simplest carbohydrate is called a monosaccharide. So monosaccharide has 1 unit of carbohydrate. So this one has 1 unit of carbohydrate, or 1 molecule. So 1 unit of carbohydrates. That's why it is monosaccharide. Disaccharides has 2 units of carbohydrates. So monosaccharides are really just simple sugars. So we have 3 important ones: glucose, fructose, and lactose. I'll show you their formulas. Disaccharides are when you combine two monosaccharides. So you need to bond them together. I think the most important monosaccharide that we know is sucrose. The sugar that we put in our tea is sucrose. So it's a combination of glucose and fructose. Then we have galactose. So galactose is a combination of glucose and lactose. You need to memorize this. Then we have maltose. This is the saccharide that we find in milk. So this one is a combination of glucose and glucose. So these are the monosaccharides. So this is how a glucose looks like. You can see that a glucose has 6 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A fructose has 5 of these. You can see a fructose has 5. So you need to take note of that. Galactose also has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is a ring with 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. While fructose is a ring with 5 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Galactose is a ring with 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, what is the difference between galactose and glucose? That's very important. The difference is here. You see this OH here and another OH here, these two. You see where they are? In glucose, they are away from this oxygen. So in glucose, the OH are away from the chain oxygen. This is the chain oxygen. You can see that this OH is away from there. This OH is away from there. So these ones, we call them the terminal. In glucose, the terminal OH. The terminal means they are at the end. Or I'll say the terminal or end OH are away from the chain oxygen. This is the chain oxygen. While in galactose, you see them, they are with. They are moving towards the chain. So in galactose, the terminal OH point toward the chain oxygen. So that's how you should see, how you should be able to recognize that this one is glucose and this one is galactose. While fructose is a 5-membered so fructose is a 5-membered ring. So you need to write down the difference among these 3 saccharides. But all of them are monosaccharides because each of them is 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit. So I'll stop here and continue in the next video.